I fell in love with data actually. And I read the book and it got me interested. And the book
Yeah.
was really about privacy in the US and
Okay.
how you don't really have privacy. And so I was shocked because I read the book and it got me interested. And the book was really about privacy in the US and how you don't really have privacy. And so I was shocked.
Listeners, today I'm excited to have a true icon in the data privacy industry, Debbie Reynolds, the data diva, with me. If you are in the data privacy world, you must have definitely heard of Debbie. She's a renowned expert in data privacy and emerging technology, serving as the CEO and Chief Data Privacy Officer at Debbie Reynolds Consulting LLC. With over 20 years of experience, she's a trusted voice in sectors like AdTech, FinTech, and AI. Debbie is also the host of the award winning podcast, The Data Diva Talks Privacy. She has been featured at major conferences and in top tier publications like Wired, Business Insider, and Bloomberg. I'm honored to have her join us today, so let's start. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, and thank you so much. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you so much for asking me to be on this program. I'm happy to be here.
Bachelor's of Arts in Philosophy from Loyola University, Chicago, and transitioning into a renowned career in data privacy is quite a journey. Can you share with us what sparked your passion for data privacy? Was there a particular moment or philosophy class that steered you in this direction?
Oh, it's an excellent question. It wasn't in university that I got interested. Actually, after I left school, I actually my mother was diagnosed with cancer
Oh,
in my senior year of college, and I decided that I need to do something where I could spend more time with her. So I got into computers. So I bought a computer, learned all I could about computers, and I fell in love with data actually. So data and what you could do with data. And so I started a business actually around that time. And around that time, I my mother had a book that she bought called The Right to Privacy, and she was very fascinated by this idea. And I read the book, and it got me interested. And the book
yeah.
was really about privacy in the U.S. and
Okay.
how you don't really have privacy. And so I was shocked because I think people in the US, we think, we're the land of the free, the home of the brave. We have all these rights, and like privacy isn't in the Constitution. And it sort of talked about the gaps in privacy law in the US. And that really got me interested. And around this time, this was kind of the dawn of the commercial internet as we know it now in the mid 90s. And as I started working more in data, and my first data job was really in library science. So I was
Oh,
creating databases for the universities,
okay.
for books and different things like that. So as more data got on the internet, as more data got into digital systems, I started seeing the gaps and the cracks in
Hmm.
privacy and how those things came about. And then I started working with a lot of multinational companies, helping them
Yeah.
build databases and data systems around the world. And in order to do that, you need to know kind of what you can and can't do with data. So a
Hmm.
lot of people, especially around the time when the European Union was thinking about redoing their data directive to try to create a regulation, which became the General Data Protection Regulation.
Hmm.
A lot of companies started calling me that knew me, and they were like, "Hey, we know that you know this private stuff. Come talk to us, right?" And so
Oh,
the first big company that called me about to talk with them, and this is before GDPR came out, was McDonald's Corporation. And
oh.
so they called like, "Hey, come talk to us about privacy." And so I talked to their whole legal department about privacy. And a couple of years later, I was asked to speak on national TV about
Hmm.
the GDPR when it came out. So I thought, well, maybe I should do this as a job. So I created my own consulting company. I've been doing it ever since.
Now, my next question is being recognized as one of the eight global data privacy experts to follow and receiving the Community Champion Award at the 2024 Privacy First Awards are remarkable achievements. How have these awards influenced your approach to data privacy?
Oh, that's a good question. Sure, these awards have influenced me in data privacy. I think that what it has done is help support the work that I do, right? So
Hmm.
for me, I do it because I'm really passionate about it. I think it's very important. So it really feels good to be able to have people outside of yourself, recognize that it's important. So for me, it really just helps me continue to move forward. It helps me to feel that, I'm moving in the right direction. So I'm really grateful. I never know if someone's going to give me an award. I just open LinkedIn and someone sends me an email like, hey, oh, we gave you an award. It's like, oh my God, thanks. So it's great.
Which recognition is the closest to your heart and why?
That's a good question. I don't
It
know.
would take you a bit of time. You've got a lot of honors and awards and recognitions. You can take your time.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't think of one. I really like,
You can name
I
two.
didn't,
You can
I,
name two.
well, the two that you named are pretty good. So, like the community
Hmm.
champion award from Transcend, great because I just think I try to help people, right? And so I feel like I have a passion to really share what I know with people, and I want people to be educated. And so for me, that's really great because I really don't think of myself as that. So I'm like, oh, okay, great. I'm a community champion. Okay, great. Right.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
Yeah.
And then Identity Review, when they did an article about me, about being one of the top 8 data privacy people to follow, that was really great too.
Hmm.
Because,
That was huge. Yeah. I like that one too.
yeah, because
It was
I
great.
thought, wow. So, I guess what I'm saying is really resonating with people and
Definitely.
they think it's important. So, yeah, those are great. I love those, right? Those are great. So I tell people like, don't pay for awards or anything, because if you do good work, people will give you accolades.
Okay, so as the host of the award-winning podcast, the Data Diva Talks Privacy, what inspired you to start the podcast and what's been your favorite episode to date?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. So the thing that inspired me to actually do videos and podcasts is that, I felt like there are a lot of people not talking about the gaps, or
Hmm.
no, people weren't talking about the cracks, right? And so for me, the podcast was really a way to talk about the things that people weren't talking about. So, I had someone from Meta was on my show. They were like, you really get into those like narrow categories, where you know what I mean, like the things that people are really concerned about, the things that people have trouble with. And so I really want to make sure that my show and even the material that I put on LinkedIn is typically
Hmm.
about people aren't talking about that have a long-term impact. So yeah, I think that's really important. I have so many favorite episodes. Probably one of my most favorite ones recently. Um, I had Jesse Taylor on the show. He
Oh.
he has a company called True Anon. So they do identity stuff, but also he was the inventor of the App Store.
Oh.
So it's huge, right? So, the fact that we don't go to stores and we don't buy things on disk and install on our
Hmm.
computer, all that stuff is done like electronically. He was kind of the inventor of that. So I love his backstory, and I love that he's working in identity right now because
Hmm.
I think identity to me is one of the biggest problems that we have on the internet right now. So I'm
Right
happy that
now.
he's helping to solve those hard problems. It's a great episode.
Cool. I should definitely watch that episode. I think I missed that one.
It's great. It's one of my favorites.
So, in the Data Diva, you recently discussed DARPA's innovative artificial intelligence adversarial attack program, GUARD. Considering DARPA's role in developing technologies to fortify AI systems against adversarial attacks, how do you see these efforts addressing the growing threat of deepfakes?
I think the work that DARPA is doing is very important. As I said in the video and the post that I put out, a lot of the innovations that we see on the commercial side, they tend to DARPA and other organizations like it on the government side, they tend to work with those things first. So a
Hmm.
lot of their work will impact us, in a good way on the commercial side because they'll definitely kick the tires and see kind of where we need to go with these things. Part of adversarial attacks is that people are doing things with technology that maybe make those systems behave in ways that they shouldn't, malfunction in different ways. But I also think, the work that they do will help in deepfakes. Maybe it'll be part of a way to help companies find out what's the best way to, for example, like maybe label
Hmm.
materials that come out of certain systems. And then, the question always is, okay, even if you label something or you watermark it, once it's out of the system, how do you identify it, right? So I think that that's going to be probably one of the bigger challenges that companies have about this. Because even if you watermark something, if it's outside of a system, they can't read what that watermark is. That's kind of the challenge, right? Because what we see now, unfortunately, the majority, like over 90% of deepfakes on the internet are non-consensual sexual images of humans, of people, real people, right?
Yes.
So they'll take a picture of a real person, they'll create this deep fake, and if you're Taylor Swift, you can sue
Hmm.
people and you'll get attention. But if you're, what if you're a teenager in high school, right? And then so how do again, once those videos or even voice prints leave those systems, how do people detect that it's fake? It's hard to do
Hmm.
that, right? Because there's
Definitely. It's
really no
it's
way to read it. Yeah.
most of the people are not even aware of it. A lot of them don't even know how to spot a deep fake. So that is a problem. So specifically, what's your take on the measures being taken to ensure that AI systems are resilient to deepfake attacks?
We're very in the early stages of this. Unfortunately, deep fakes have been developing over many years without people really paying attention.
Into
So
it?
they've become very good. And I think also there's something psychological with people. So, we are conditioned to believe that we see something with our eyes that is true, right? And so what AI is doing is challenging that notion, right? So you can see something that looks real, but it not be true. But our minds think it's real, right? And
Yeah.
our emotions think it's real. And it really isn't. So I think that, you know, I see companies who are trying to say, okay, well, let's buy my product and I can tell if something is real or fake. And we're so early yet, where these systems really are not accurate. They're really not accurate enough to be able to do the job. And so
Hmm.
eventually, I think, there's going to have to be many more years of work on this. I'm concerned about, uh, these things harming people. Like, so someone say, hey, this is a video of me, and someone say, oh, no, it's not you. So how are you gonna, like, say, let's someone's taking a virtual test, taking a test on the internet or something, and they say, okay, well, we
Definitely.
think this is not you, right? It's like, well, it is me, right? And so that's the problem that you have with this, where it could definitely have a harm to people, especially if it's not true. And so I'm
Hmm.
always cautious with, when people tell me, okay, we're going to use the deep fake detection. I'm like, well, it's really not, this is not accurate enough for you to really be able to use it. But unfortunately, companies sell these products, they sell it as if it's true and right. And I feel like it's almost similar to what we see in the biometric area, where they're like, hey, this
Hmm.
thing is so accurate. And we know as people of color that it really is not, right? But so I think that's the same problem we're going to have with deepfakes, where it's going to be many years until it gets good enough to be
Hmm.
accurate. And then I think we should take it with a grain of salt because it may not be.
Okay, so adding on to your answer, how crucial is the integration of human in the loop safeguards in this attempt?
Yeah. Human in the loop is vital. human, not human in the loop is so important in kind of deep fake detection. One area that I'm looking very closely at is the OSINT area, which is
Hmm.
basically people taking information in digital systems and they investigate stuff, right? And they say, hey, this video looks real. And they'll say, well, where was the video taken? And they're like, okay, it was taken in Cairo and on this time of day. And they're like, well, the shadow is not right for this time of day, or so they do like that really deep analysis of things, and you see it a lot more in like news organizations. So like for
Hmm.
example, that the picture of Queen Princess Kate in England, how all the news
Hmm.
agencies were like, "Hey, this is not real," right? So a lot of those things are used in investigations, and news agencies use it. But the problem with OSINT is that it's time consuming, uh, and it's not fast, right? Because, especially in a deep fake world, right? So that for example, that deep fake of Taylor Swift that came out on Twitter and
Hmm.
different things, like it was shared like millions of times
Yeah,
before
it,
anyone
it
like
blew
said,
up.
hey,
It blew up.
yeah. Like before anybody stopped it or before anybody said, even when people were saying, hey, we don't think this is real, because it's like part of that part of the part of finding out whether something is real or fake, you need to really think about, like, would this person actually do this, right? So if it's something that the person probably wouldn't do, that's probably the first indication that it may not be true, right? But it didn't stop people from sharing that video, right? And talking
Hmm.
about it a lot. So that's the problem, where these images, they spread like wildfire, and they can be very damaging. Someone like Taylor Swift,
Hmm.
again, she can, when that deepfake came out, like, a lot of lawmakers were really concerned, they're, oh my God, there's a deepfake of Taylor Swift, right? But like, again, if you're like a high school student, like, who's going to champion this for you, right? Do you have millions of dollars that you can fight these things in court or make Twitter take these images down? No, right? And that's the problem that we have with deepfakes.
Yeah, that is very true. Additionally, what regulatory measures do you believe are necessary to protect consumers from deep-fake fraud in this evolving data landscape? You just talked about a person who was scammed, and I actually found it very intriguing. Now, I just want to know what regulatory measures do you think are extremely necessary to protect such frauds?
Yeah, I think from deep fakes, again, because the majority of deep fakes are sexually explicit images that are
Hmm.
non-consented of humans that exist, right? Not of fake people. They're a depiction of real people, right? And so there are some laws coming up, especially in the US on the state level around this issue. In the US, I think we have about, last time I checked, about 40 some states have laws around revenge porn. So
Hmm.
revenge pornography, basically the laws say, hey, if you have a sexually explicit image or video of someone, it's illegal to transmit that stuff without someone's consent, right? And
Hmm.
so the problem with revenge porn laws is that the video or the image has to be a real image, right? And so deepfakes are not real. And so that's why those laws don't really cover it. So we see certain states like Illinois, they're extending their uh, revenge porn laws to add in information about deepfakes. And basically,
Hmm.
they say if you transmit images or videos of that is depicting someone, right? Because this is the problem. So they create a video of they create a fake video, but the image they want is of a real person, right? So they're saying, okay, if you take, they create a criminal liability for someone if they actually create or transmit a rendition or a video that's depicting a real person, even though the video is not fake. So, I mean, the video is not real. So, I think I would hope to see more regulation like that. I hope to see, I've seen legislative people say, hey, we want you to, these companies to like watermark these videos so people know if it's real or fake.
Mm.
I think in the future, there's going to be so many fake things on the internet. Like, I think the easier thing would be to watermark stuff that's real. Right, because that stuff is harder to create and there's less of it. Because you really want to be able to tell what's real or fake. So truly, the answer, in my view, is to be able to tell what's real in the future, and then we just assume that everything else that isn't real is going to be fake.
Okay, yeah, good answer. I will be moving to the next question. In 2024, the UN passed a resolution on artificial intelligence, co-sponsored by over 123 countries, which emphasizes the development of trustworthy and ethical AI. Given the rise of deepfakes and their potential to cause significant harm, how do you think this UN resolution can specifically aid in combating deepfake technology or frauds?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think of this resolution as something that would directly impact
Hmm.
deepfakes. I think the point of the resolution is say, hey, AI is here. AI is important. We can't ignore AI. And then we also need to make sure that we're not just developing it for certain people and
Hmm.
understanding that it can harm other people, right? So what we see right now is kind of runaway development with AI or artificial intelligence, and we're saying, okay, we can solve these huge problems, like let's say through identity, for example. Like we have a lot of like stadiums, for example, if you go to a sports event, they are a lot of stadiums, they have all these high-tech biometric systems that identify people, right? What if they misidentify someone or someone goes to jail or something like that? Because they say, hey, we think you're a criminal that stole this thing, right? And we know that these things are not accurate, especially on people of color, right? So I think that the UN resolution is basically saying to the world, artificial intelligence is important, is moving very fast. We need to make
Hmm.
sure that, we want to acknowledge the innovation, but we also
Hmm.
want to make sure that it benefits all people and not just some people. And we need to really think about what those human harms are. So I'm hoping that, you know, that resolution will help other countries be able to understand, like on a global stage, this
Hmm.
is what other countries are really thinking about, and maybe there could be more knowledge sharing amongst countries around the best ways to handle artificial intelligence. We see, for example, the European Union was the first, jurisdiction to have a huge comprehensive
Hmm.
artificial intelligence law, right? And so, I'm hoping that other countries will see that. Obviously, I don't think that they're going to adopt it just the same way that the EU has done, but maybe there'll be bits and pieces and parts of that will influence other jurisdictions to really help regulate artificial intelligence uses.
That's actually the need of the hour as well, and countries should definitely look into that. Okay, so I think you must have heard about the recent class action lawsuits against Hilton Hotels in Chicago, and that it has raised significant concerns over the use and collection of biometric data, particularly under Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. These cases highlight significant issues of consent and transparency in biometric data. With advancements in cognitive biometrics and the potential for deepfakes to manipulate biometric data, how can we safeguard individuals against the misuse of their biometric data, including the creation of deepfakes, and establish a right to cognitive liberty to protect our neural data?
Yeah, that's a big question. Let's see. Well, first of all, yeah, I saw the thing about the Hilton case. This law in Illinois is called the Biometric Information Privacy Act. You talked about BIPA. I am always stunned that companies can't follow this law. It's literally 4 pages. It's very simple. It's like, hey, When you collect someone's biometrics, let them know what you're collecting it for. Tell them uh, when you're gonna, how long you're gonna retain it, basically,
Hmm.
and that's it. That's
Basically.
really all you have to do. So, the fact that these companies, these huge companies, get into trouble, that's literally all they can have to do. The problem with that is that companies traditionally have not had to ever, first of all, delete data, and they never had to tell you what they were going to do with data once they collect it. So for companies who have these biometric, systems, they just think, okay, well, this is fine. I don't have to like tell anybody what I'm going to do with the stuff. In Illinois, it just doesn't work, and I don't know. I don't know how. I think that they've elicited over $1 billion in fines and settlements from companies in Illinois because even big companies like Facebook, they don't know how to, read a 4-page law for some reason. I
Hmm.
don't know. But I think, one of the big things that is come out of this is that they're saying, hey, when you're dealing with someone's biometric and it gets breached or something happens, you can't change your face, you can't change your fingerprints, right? That is a problem. And then also, I think to extend it to things like deepfakes, even though deepfakes wouldn't be under this law, you know, if, the harm, there may not be any adequate way to address the harm that can happen, right? So a
Hmm.
teenage girl who's at a school who has a deep fake video made of her, what is she gonna do? What
Yeah.
what can she do? You really can't do much of anything, right? Once it's out there, it's out there. I've seen some teenagers who have spoken up and talked to their representatives and legislature and Congress and say, hey, this happened to me and I want to see some regulation around that. That's really all that you can do. But I think, the important thing is to be vigilant, right? If this is not something that this person would typically do, you should probably assume that it's fake, right? I
Yeah.
I think there are going to be a lot of laws around people sharing, this
Hmm.
data. So it's going to become, more, almost like child like sexual images, where it's like they want to stop people from sharing that information. So I think maybe they want to do that with deepfakes as well, where
They
they'll
should.
criminalize the sharing, the dissemination of those things. So then, we could stop people from creating harmful situations for the people that are depicted in these deepfake videos.
Definitely. Okay, so in episode 183 of the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, you and Devesh Chaudhary discussed the vulnerabilities in image and voice recognition technologies, highlighting concerns about accuracy and security. With the rapid advancement and deepfake technology and its potential to exploit these vulnerabilities, what steps should be taken to enhance the security of biometric systems against deepfake attacks?
Companies really need to understand that when they take on a biometric system, that they're taking on more risk for themselves, and that there has to be more due diligence around how those images are used and disseminated. So, for me, when I'm talking with companies about biometric systems, I'm telling them, hey, first of all, do you need to keep the image, right? So, what
Hmm.
what are you using the image for, first of all, and then how long do you need to retain it? We're seeing a lot more biometric uses in like things like airports. And basically, to me, the way that it's used in the airport is probably maybe the better way that you can use it. So basically, they may take a picture of you, or they'll try to match your picture to the picture that you give them on the ID. Then they want to say, okay, is this the person that we saw in Chicago when they showed up in London? This is the same person. So they're matching those pictures together.
Hmm.
And then what they're doing is that they delete those images once you pass those gate checks or whatever. And so to me, that's probably like the best use of biometrics you can ask for. The worst uses of biometrics is where you have someone take your picture, like a live picture of you, and then they try to
Hmm.
match you against like a database, right? So like try to match you against maybe a photo that's in uh like a driver's database, and those are very different, right? So there are different light, there are different shades and shadows and different things like that. There have been people who have been arrested because they were mismatched on biometric systems. Unfortunately, a lot of those people are people of color. I think in terms of deepfakes, I think it's going to be very challenging because unfortunately, a lot of our laws and regulations that come up around these things only happen if something bad happens, right? So, unfortunately, and I hope we get out of this situation where, I don't think something bad should happen to someone before we realize we need some regulation
Mm,
in this area around
definitely.
how these images are created and these depictions are being used, because really they're being used to harm people. That's really the purpose of it.
That's really the purpose for these, and it's actually very alarming. So, adding on to your answer, how can we balance the adoption of AI and biometrics in security measures? Because there will always be a need to protect privacy and ensure data integrity, right? So, especially in the light of this increasing prevalence of deepfakes, how can we balance the adoption of AI?
I think the European Union has a right where they're saying, hey, there needs to be more checks and balances, especially around high risk uses of AI. And those high
Mm,
risk things be things that will harm humans, right? So, like, if, for example, you're using AI to create a video, maybe it's a cartoon for your kid or something, like nobody
mm,
cares about that. There's no risk there for a human if you do that, or you're creating something, something that would not cause harm to someone. But when you're having a situation where these harmful things are being created, you need to
mm,
definitely be able to check and make sure, like, for example, companies that have capabilities to create these images, I think it's going to be harder for them to manage because from one person to the next, you don't know if one person's trying to create a harmful image or not, right? We
mm,
do see some situations where the companies that are providing these AI tools, they're trying to suppress uses where they are creating harmful images. But unfortunately, there are other companies, that's really what they do, right? They are in business because they want
because of that.
to earn money so that people can do whatever they want, right? And so I think there was a big issue that came out recently where I think there was a company that was at a company that does deep fakes, like non-consensual deep fakes, had bought
Oh,
advertising, I think on Facebook or something. And people like totally went crazy about that. And they eventually took that company off. But a lot of times what happens is, hey, they sell advertising and some people really want that, right? But they're like,
yeah.
hey,
It's a shocker.
it is shocking. It's like you're basically creating something that could possibly be a crime against someone, in certain jurisdictions. So the law, unfortunately, isn't fast enough
Mm,
for the level of innovation that we're seeing. But I think we all need to be more vigilant about this, and I highly recommend people, especially if they're seeing these things, report it to an
mm,
authority, report it to a legislature, because they don't want to see their families or their children depicted in that way. So I think there just needs to be more action, I think, on a legislative level, and also just the education level around that. Yeah.
Okay, so you already know that I recently authored a deepfake report for VPN ranks, and can you share some effective strategies for educating the public about recognizing and reporting deepfake content? We've already mentioned some of the public awareness that there needs to be an awareness program for the public to really know what deepfakes are and how they can combat the deepfake related frauds. But as you've already told and highlighted multiple times during the interview that people are not really aware about it. So, can we share some effective strategies to do just that?
Yeah. I think probably the first, before there will ever be watermarking or everything, I guess you need to ask yourself, would the person who's in the video. Would this person do this thing? The thing that's being depicted in the video, right? And chances are they wouldn't. Uh, so if you're without needing technology, I think you need to think out at that way. Would this person want images of them private, things that should be
Hmm.
private, right? Put in a public sphere. That's like another thing. Like, do I think this is real or not? Right. We're seeing, for example, I think that this was a deep fake, but it was about a voice. So there was a situation where there was actually a principal, someone had taken his voice
Hmm.
and had dubbed his voice to make it say something that he wouldn't say. And actually, I think he got in trouble with his school board or something, and he was able to say, "Hey, this is not me." And fortunately, they believed him, right? He's like,
Uh,
"This is not something that I would do. This is not something that I would say," right? But someone was trying to harm him and his reputation as a result of
hmm.
that. So we just need people to have more sense about, would this
Yeah.
has this person ever said this thing? This is so out
Hmm.
of the ordinary for that
It would be
person, right?
easier if people just started asking this question, and that would
Yeah.
literally be the end of that deepfake.
Yeah, totally. Right. And then you don't want to disseminate it, right? So then it's
Hmm.
it's incumbent on the person, if they've seen it and they know it's not real, that they should not share that information.
Hmm.
Because you don't want to give it more traction. So yeah.
Hmm. Okay, so our report lists resources like Cyber Civil Rights Initiative, Without My Consent, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and more for the victims of deepfakes. Are there any additional support systems or actions you would recommend for those affected by deepfake exploitation?
I would definitely say, write to your representative or legislature. Let them know the things that are happening.
Hmm.
You'd be surprised. I think sometimes we feel like government is so big and we can't like get our voice in. But I think,
Hmm.
there are legislative people who are very concerned about this issue and they want to know kind of those real world stories because that helps them think about what they can do from a regulatory situation and those types of personal stories really do help move the needle and really do
Hmm.
help them understand what those harms are. So definitely, if you know anyone who has been impacted, ask them to write a letter, like
Hmm.
whether it be a school board, write it to their legislator, the governor in different jurisdictions, whoever is in charge, because they don't know what's
Hmm.
happening unless you tell them. So it's very important.
Yeah. Opening up is important, and opening up to the relevant people is extremely important. As a closing note, having spoken at many cybersecurity events, have you encountered any discussions or insights specifically about deepfakes that could be valuable to our listeners?
Yeah, I think when I go to conferences and they're talking about deep fakes, people are just really concerned that the technology has just run away,
Hmm.
way, way far ahead of, regulation, way far ahead of people's thinking. I don't think that people realize that the technology is so good, right? That it doesn't look fake, right? They can create images that look real, like, okay,
Yeah.
this actually happened, right? Even though it may not be real. So
Hmm.
I think all of it is really about vigilance and like thinking like, would this person do this thing? Would this person release this information? Is incumbent, I think, on social media
Hmm.
platforms that as soon as they get those reports, they really need to shut those accounts down and shut those people down because these things can spread like wildfire. So we don't want to encourage uh, um, the proliferation of this. And you definitely
Hmm.
don't want to continue to have people share those images or share that information. So it's important to speak out if they're not real. It's important to let whatever medium that those things come through, let those companies know, hey, this is not real. This is fake. This is misinformation. So reporting that
Hmm.
thing is important. So I think all of us are very concerned because of the rapid advancements there without really any true guardrails. Yeah.
Yeah. And looking ahead, how do you see the trend of deepfakes evolving in the next few years, or let's just say the next 5 years?
Yeah. Well, the deepfakes are very good already. So I think that they're only going to get better. They're only
Hmm.
going to get faster. A
Hmm.
lot of the deepfakes we're talking about many years ago, they may have been good then, but they were very expensive to do. Now that expense is going like almost to zero, so it's like
Hmm.
very little cost to
Yeah.
be able to create that. We see that this new technology from OpenAI called Sora that can create these little videos and stuff like that. They try to do things where they try to suppress things where they don't want it to create like sexually explicit depictions of people, but then there's going to be someone else, right, who knows how to do that thing, the same thing, or knows how to break those models to have it do things maybe it would not have otherwise done. So I think
Hmm.
it's a challenge because there are people who really want, people really there are people who really want to create those things, right? And someone
Yeah.
somewhere is gonna sell them that whatever that tool is that they want, which is a problem, right? But we as a society, we have to kind of put our foot down and make sure that we're saying, hey, we don't want this, we don't like this, we're not gonna share,
We're
we're
not
not
gonna
gonna
encourage such posts. Yeah.
yeah, we're not going to amplify, these
Hmm.
people who are doing this thing. So I think
Yeah.
you definitely have to shut them down. But it's an ongoing thing. I think it's going to take a lot, not just the company, not just the social media companies, but then also the people who, if you ever run
Yeah.
across those things, reporting those things to those platforms, talking with your legislative people who are in charge, writing letters. I think it's very important.
Yeah. Okay, so with a career that many aspire to, Debbie, what advice would you give to young professionals looking to make their mark in the industry?
Let's see. The advice I would give to young professionals to make a mark in the industry, I would say is, read about the technologies that are coming out.
Hmm.
Read about, like, I look at the technology stuff first, right? And people always ask me, like, how are you so far ahead? It's like, because I look at the technology. Like, the technology, when people are creating these technologies, the last thing they're thinking about is law and regulation, right? They're like, hey, I created this cool thing or whatever. But I always think, what's going to be the impacts of these innovations or these
Hmm.
technologies? And, what do we need to think about? Like, if I was ever faced with a situation like you're talking about with a deep fake, like, what would I do if one of those showed up in my mailbox or, showed up on my desk? Or what would I have my company do that I'm advising? So thinking about looking at that technology as it's being developed, thinking about those questions, like what will this mean to
Hmm.
people in the future? And if you do that, then if you're in that situation, you're prepared for, to take whatever those next steps are. But I think right now it's an open question because the way the internet is now, it's hard to, again, I guess to use my wildfire analogy, these things they catch on like wildfire, right? So it's like, who's gonna put the fire out? Who's gonna stop the fire? Who's gonna say, hey, we need to be more in prevention as opposed to firefighting? So I think all those are all open questions.
Yeah, they definitely are. Okay, so my last question to you is what future projects or initiatives are you most excited about in the coming years?
Oh, that's a good question. Let's see. I'm very interested in how we can find ways to have people limit what they share
Hmm.
and have more control over what's shared about them, being able to really, whether you consent or you decide you want to revoke consent, I'm excited
Hmm.
about technologies to really give people that control that they really want. Also being able to maybe decentralize some of their data where data is maybe on their devices or on their computers and they don't get copied or replicated out into the cloud. I'm really excited about that. And then
Hmm.
places around sort of identity,
Hmm.
being able to uh, prove who you are without creating more risk for yourself by giving your identity documents in a way that can create like identity theft and things like that. Like there should be ways that we can prove our identity without giving up documents that are going to help criminals like do crime against ourselves.
Hmm. Okay, so that was all from my side, Debbie. I had a great time chatting with you. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you had fun.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. These are all amazing questions. So yeah, happy to chat with you and your audience. This has been amazing.
Thank you so much, Debbie.